time periods in a president's term.
Oh, yeah, the first 100 days. And if not, like the 2 months before the first 100 days, so right now, right? So we talk about this kind of cycle of influence of a president, and we refer to it as a honeymoon period. Now, you said earlier this is all unprecedented. So, Aaron, I want to just say, we didn't really talk about this stuff when Grover Cleveland did what Donald Trump did, right? So I'm a little unclear how this feels. So does this feel like we were married to Trump and then we divorced and now we're getting back together? That's a different honeymoon, right, than the first honeymoon?
Sure.
Right. Okay. So, but we use this word of honeymoon to say the first few months of a relationship is wonderful. Everything is fabulous. That's why you call it a honeymoon. And that's when the president's influence is at his highest. That's when he can get the most done. If he's got unified party, that is when he can get the most done. So this is a critical time for the president and right now for the Republican Party, because that's the party in power. But they literally have till May, right? Like, so the answer is then, again, we talked about it earlier. The bloom is off the rose. Things are going to happen and people are going to remember, oh, yeah, this is who we were dating and I didn't like that when we were dating. And, and I'm committed to you for 4 years, but I'll tell you what, that's annoying. Just like any normal human relationship, right, Aaron? Like after a few months, you're like, oh, no, you don't put your clothes in the laundry and baby, the honeymoon is over, right? Like those metaphors that we use.
Yeah.
Right. In any relationship that we have is true between the nation and the president. Right. So. Yeah, so right now he cannot be squandering political capital, right?
Yeah, interesting. So basically what that means is that anything Trump does right now is going to have a significantly higher influence on what happens over the next 4 years than anything he does, say, 8 months from now.
That is right, because to a certain extent it's gone. At that point, it's just too late.
We said, then you're into the 2026 election cycle. If he were to lose a majority in the House or the Senate or both, that would dramatically change his ability to move things around.
Right, and thinking about that House that you talked about earlier, it's like, so Mike Johnson almost didn't get Speaker because 3 people were not doing it. That's tight. And what we know about a midterm election generally is the president's party loses seats. So that's 3. If I'm going to lose even 5 seats, now that's Hakeem Jeffries' chamber. I'll just make that apostrophe without the S at the end of it. Right. Then that changes everything for the back end of his next term.
Yeah. So one of the things that's going to be really interesting to watch with this is the reconciliation package. Now, we have seen a whole bunch of different things on how this reconciliation package is going to happen. Leah, tell us a little bit about what is being said by Speaker Johnson, what is being said by Senate Majority Leader Thune. Where are we on this?
Yeah, so what's interesting here is we can go back to that continuing resolution conversation we had a month ago as a preview of what's going to be happening with Congress. So Donald Trump has James Braid, who is a former staffer from the House.
Not just from the House. I think he's from the House Freedom Caucus. Which is interesting.
Right, who is handling his negotiations. Now, normally what I would tell you is that's great because if Trump picks somebody from within the family, you know what I mean? Usually the conversations go a little bit better. But what I understand is he wasn't popular in the family, right? So he was someone who, yes, was part of the House Freedom Caucus, but wasn't someone you wanted to sit at Thanksgiving dinner, if I'm just torturing that metaphor. So a little bit maybe that's the wrong choice. What we have is they are looking for a single comprehensive reconciliation package. President-elect Donald Trump called it one big, beautiful bill. But, a lot of lawmakers would prefer 2 bills. The argument basically saying we've got to deliver on border security and defense. We've got to extend tax cuts and maybe, even when you've got everything, the honeymoon and all the party and everything, that can take a long time. We've got to deliver this earlier. And so if we split it, maybe we can do a better job.
Yeah, well, and I think it's also been challenging because Trump has sort of equivocated on what he actually wants. In fact, we have a clip here of what Trump was saying. Let's listen.
The question is whether or not we do the 2 bills or 1 bill. And, look, I can live either way. I like the idea of the one big bill, but I can live either way. If 2 is more certain, it does go a little bit quicker because you can do the immigration stuff early.
Right. So
how does this complicate the congressional leader how does this
Right.
complicate their job?
So right there in that sound is what I would call, I don't know, a mixed message, right? So what we need from Donald Trump is for him to say, he can live either way, because of course he can. What he has to say is, I want a single bill, deliver everything to me, or I want 2 bills, give that to me. That gives Mike Johnson some room, right, to move. The Freedom Caucus, the members that were holdouts, my understanding is they only voted for Mike Johnson to be Speaker because President-elect Trump told them to, right? So what we need is for President-elect Trump to give a clear signal what kind of package that he wants. Over in the Senate, so you asked about Thune. So what we've got is Mike Johnson, and he's got his drama in the House. John Thune is the Senate Majority Leader over in South Dakota, or in the Senate. He's from South Dakota, excuse me. And basically there, I think it's a little bit different. I think John Thune is not as concerned about what President Trump is doing.
Yeah, he's been kind of clear on that. He has not been shy. I mean, he's not a staunch Trump supporter like some of the others who were up for House Majority Leader or Senate Majority Leader. So how does this further complicate things for Johnson if Thune is kind of marching to his own drum?
Yeah, there's one of my favorite quotes, and I will just keep it inside my back pocket who said it to me, but it was a House member who basically said, the problem is the other party in the House, but the enemy is the Senate, right? Because the answer is, from a House member's point of view, whatever they're going to do with their bills in the Senate just makes it all more difficult. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of interchamber battling, right? Mm-hmm. I love to tell my students, man, those conference meetings must be super interesting when they come in and they just disagree. So a little bit, but Thune, let's think of it this way. Johnson doesn't get picked, almost, in a very public way.
Right.
Thune is picked in a very private way.
Yes, and
right.
quickly.
And very quickly. So senators behind closed door in a secret ballot choose who their leadership is. And they can all walk out and go, I don't know who voted for Thune. I'm like, they have all this kind of cover. Does that make sense? Cover in the way that they're doing stuff. So if it is the case, how do I say it? Like the leverage from Donald Trump, which seems to be kind of activating his base to be frustrated with House members, that same power is not available to him with the Senate, And then also, he's got to get all of those nominees through the Senate
That's
at
right.
the same time that he's trying to get this reconciliation package. So the dynamics in that relationship look a little bit different. All of it makes it harder for Johnson.
Yeah. And, one of the other things that Johnson's going to have to face is the rules package, which has not yet been finalized. And the rules package is important because if they can't get it, they can't do any work until they know how to get the work done.
Yeah, I thought that, man, I was listening today while I was on a run to a podcast that said they didn't have a rules committee together. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what? Literally, yeah. I was like, why is that not the first thing that he has done? Because what you just said, nothing moves until there's a rules committee.
Yep. Well, you can keep up to date on all the news with the incoming administration and the new Congress by downloading the KSL News Radio app. You can listen live to KSL, listen on demand to your favorite KSL podcasts like Inside Sources.
This one's your favorite.
That's right, absolutely. And get breaking news push notifications. Download the app for free today. Just text the word app, APP, to 57500. And when Inside Sources returns, we're going to come back to Utah for a minute. We've been talking to some newly elected leaders around the state. We're going to continue with that discussion here with our newest state auditor, Tina Cannon, coming up next.
Good afternoon. It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Maria Chaleos. KSL's top local story this hour. And it is breaking news. The mayor of Park City is calling on Vail to finish negotiations with the Park City Mountain Ski Patrol Union after a weekend of what she says was full of confusion and disruption. Mayor Nan Worrell said in a statement that it's Vail Resort's responsibility to end the conflict without any more delay. KSL's top national story from ABC News. Jimmy Carter's State Memorial has moved to Washington after observances in his native Georgia. 39th President's remains left the Carter Presidential Center this morning and flew to the Washington area aboard Special Air Mission 39. Members of Congress will honor Carter in the Capitol Rotunda this afternoon. A judge has denied President-elect Trump's request to delay his impending sentencing. ABC's Olivia Rubin has more.
A legal blow today for Donald Trump. A New York appeals judge denying his request to delay his criminal sentencing, set for Friday. Judge Ellen Gesmer rejecting Trump's claim that the case should be delayed because of presidential immunity.
Trump was convicted in May for falsifying business records. Also today, the Trump-appointed federal judge who oversaw the classified documents case against the president-elect blocked the Justice Department from releasing the final conclusions of special counsel Jack Smith. Taking a look at your money at this moment, the Dow is down by 256 points, sitting at 42,520. S&P is down by 74. The NASDAQ down by 402 points. That is more than a full 2%. Coming up, nice weather for the next few days before another storm sets in. We'll take a look at the forecast and a look at your traffic coming up next.
The sources where we get our news matters.
When you listen to Utah's Morning News, we want you to feel the stories are important to you and trustworthy. This is Amanda Dixon.
And I'm Andy Farnsworth. Join us weekday mornings on KSL News Radio.
Attention home buyers, want to save hundreds on your mortgage payment or buy a bigger, nicer home? Visit SaveRight.com. This is Rod with the SaveRight team at Realty Path. SaveRight, our name says it all. SaveRight real estate clients often save $300 to $600 a month on their mortgage. Life of loan savings can be over $300,000. SaveRight clients qualify for and buy bigger, nicer homes. Interest rates are around 7%. SaveRight clients can get fixed rates in the 5s. Our affiliate lender makes it all possible. You can even start with a rate in the 2s. If you're buying or selling a home in Utah, save a ton of money. Hire the SaveRight team of realtors. Visit SaveRight.com for more information.
My daughter, she's 2. My wife, Meriden, we did it together because we want to be around a long time for her.
Every single day, people are losing weight and keeping it off with Soda Weight Loss, improving their health, their quality of life.
I would recommend this program to anybody. Anybody can do it.
For the month of January, Soda Weight Loss is offering a new client partner program. Join with a partner, a friend, someone you love for the cost of one.
Tried everything from fasting to every diet. Kept hearing about Soda Weight Loss. So what they did was give me a plan to lose the weight. It came with a nutritionist, came without drugs or pills or shots or side effects.
What are you waiting for? Get started with Soda Weight Loss right now with a partner and only pay for one.
Do you know how good it feels to let go of 51 pounds of belly fat? Because Soda Weight Loss works.
Visit sodaweightloss.com. That's SOTA weightloss.com. Soda is, say it with me, state of the art.
As a mom, comforting my family is what I do best. Vicks Vapor Stick provides soothing, non-medicated Vicks vapors in an easy-to-apply stick. And it dries fast, so there's no mess. I use it to comfort myself and my family.
Thanks, Mom.
Vicks Vapo Stick, soothing comfort for the whole family. And when you need more comfort for yourself, try Vicks Vapo Shower Max for steamy Vicks vapors. Use as directed. Vapo Stick for use ages 4 and up. Vapo Shower Max use for adults only.
Hey, can you blow up some balloons for Jack's party?
I can't. I'm so congested.
You need Sinex Saline from Vicks.
Sinex Saline Nasal Spray?
Yeah, just Sinex. Breathe.
Sinex Saline instantly clears everyday congestion associated with colds and year-round allergies with a gentle, ultra-fine mist that's no mess and easy to control.
Daddy, we need more balloons.
On it.
Enjoy life's important moments without congestion. Try Sinex Saline from Vicks. Just Sinex. Breathe. Use as directed.
Traffic and weather together. It's brought to you by My Style Checking from Mountain America Credit Union. Ricky Meese, what's going on?
On southbound Redwood Road at Pony Express Parkway is pretty much out of the way, but scanners calling out an accident northbound I-15 near 33rd South. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And taking a look at the forecast for the Wasatch Front, a great weather for the work week, but the weather changing over the weekend with a 30% chance of showers on both Saturday and Sunday. Right now, 41 degrees. I'm Maria Chaleos from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at KSLNewsRadio.com. We are Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. A new presidency, new state leaders, and a new legislative session. Utah's top political experts discuss the day's biggest stories. Only on KSL News Radio.
And welcome back to Inside Sources. You're here with me, Leah Murray, alongside my good friend Aaron Ryder. And I wanted to just take a moment, Aaron, before we get to our next interview and talk about what we're seeing. Because as you all know, we are tracking what's happening in Washington, D.C. Former President Jimmy Carter's motorcade has just arrived at the Navy Memorial. And I don't know, Aaron, how you feel about it, but I really like the ritual. You know what I mean? Like there's how when the nation mourns together, that's a very shared identity kind of moment. And I just want to take a second to talk about we're waiting for his casket to be taken out of the hearse, put into that beautiful caisson that has those gorgeous horses. Will then take him to, I think, the rotunda. Right now they are at Navy Memorial.
That's right. And so what we're seeing right now, he's got military procession. The hearse has arrived, and so we're waiting for them to transfer him to the caisson, and then they'll proceed with the procession. And he will lie in wait at the rotunda.
Yeah, lie in state, right?
State.
Yeah. He's not waiting for anything,
You're
but
here for me.
yeah. So, but I think it's good. We'll come back to this as throughout the day, we are tracking this, and we'll give you some insight and some description of what's happening. But let's turn to who we've got in studio, Aaron.
Yeah, let's talk about this. So we are continuing our discussion of newly elected officials in the state. And today we have Tina Cannon with us, who has been elected to state auditor. Now, this is, first of all, I'm very excited about this. Tina is a friend. We have been on the campaign trail together. We talked about campaigning in Utah a lot as fellow Republican women. And this is an historic vote for not only for state auditor, but for the state of Utah. Tina, you are the first woman elected to not only the position of state auditor, but the first Republican woman elected to a statewide office. Is that right?
That's right. The first one independently elected. We have had lieutenant governors who've run on a joint ticket, with usually a male counterpart. This is the first time a Republican woman has been independently elected. Jan Graham was able to do it as a Democrat. That's been 32 years ago. And this is the first time.
And she did it for Attorney General.
Yes.
So, Tina, I just want to say the fact that I didn't know that, I'm annoyed by. So I just want to take a moment here and say, as someone who follows politics and as someone who very much cares about this concept that if you can see it, you can be it, right? And the fact that you are the first woman elected statewide independently, to me, feels like there'll be so many more women running for office, right? Because what we know is women are less likely to run. They have to kind of be asked. They're not sure they should. And my goodness, I think seeing you do this hopefully opens up a whole new class of Republican women who might start running for office. So I'm excited. I just needed to say it.
I appreciate that. And that's how I feel about it, is I hope that is what happens, because I can't tell you how close I was to not running because I knew that. I knew that stat. And it wasn't whether or not I felt like I was the most qualified, which I felt like I was. I was the deputy. How could I not be the most qualified? But I didn't know if it was possible in Utah to be able to do it as a woman.
Now, and this is a really good point. You were the chief deputy under former state auditor John Dougal.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you got a lot of support from Auditor Dougal and so forth?
Of course. I was his deputy, so I felt like I already had the vision. I already knew the direction John had gone, and he was a very unique state auditor in state history. He was the first one without an accounting background. He is an engineer by trade. So being in the office and as an accountant and seeing the difference was it brought a new perspective to the office. So I knew I had John's support. I knew but it is also difficult to run as an independent person for an office when your boss is in the office currently. So we're walking a line here.
Yeah, I got you. And Tina, I'm just going to pause you for a moment because I just wanted everyone to be aware that in the Jimmy Carter funeral, they are moving the casket right now, and it's beautiful. And Tina, you could turn around and see it on that screen behind me, or behind you, excuse me. Aaron, it's like now all of the military tribute, right? Because it's not just a funeral for a president. It is a military funeral because he was a veteran, right? So all of these gorgeously uniformed, service people transferring under the flag, which is, beautifully flowing in the wind. It's like the universe just made this a perfect day for this.
Yeah, and it really, like you said earlier, I love the ritual part of this. I love, we don't have a ton of pomp and circumstance stuff in the United States. like they do in some other countries, we do here, and I love that.
Yeah, no, I think a state funeral is maybe the saddest example of it, but really good example of it.
Yeah.
All right, so Tina, I'm going to come back to you and just know that we are tracking what's
No, you're
happening
good.
on
You're
that.
good. It is
And
an
I do
important day.
apologize for interrupting
No,
you.
you're good.
So I think Aaron was asking you about serving in the state deputy state auditor as that position, and you were saying, right, like it's hard because your boss, like, and
you
how
have to
does
watch
that
what you
work?
say. It's
But
hard
can
to
you-
disagree.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
tell
can't really
us.
go after your boss on
No.
the campaign trail,
No,
can you?
you can't. The question, what will you do differently, is it's a little fraught sometimes.
No, I'm sure that it is. But all right, let's not do that question then.
All
so you
right.
don't have to say
No.
anything about
No,
former Auditor Dougal. But could you say, what does an auditor do? Because I do wonder
So
if a lot of
what
our
does a
listeners.
state auditor do?
Yeah, I don't think people realize just how much oversight we have. So we are independently elected from the governor for a reason. If it is a financial transaction in government in Utah, we have oversight over it. That means not just state government, that means local government. So if it's a county, a city, a school district, a service district, as in a cemetery district and a water district, our office has financial oversight and subpoena authority over those transactions. So the best way to explain it, one night about 9:30, I was watching TV with my husband and I get a phone call from a school district in a closed session. They're suffering from an embezzlement. They need advice on what to do. The state auditor was who they called. They got me at 9:30 at night and we walked it through. Here's how you handle that. Most people don't realize that the importance of that is if you need to do a financial investigation, you don't go to the AG's office you go to the state auditor. So we walked them through how to do that. Our office stepped in. That also saves that school district and those taxpayers a lot of money as we walk in and we provide that oversight. So that's the worst extreme example.
I was going to say, all I heard in that story was 9:30 p.m. And I'm like thinking,
it never
Are you
stops.
sure? It never stops.
It never
Go ahead.
stops.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, it never stops. And I find that all the time. And we joke in the office that we destroy our faith in our fellow men one investigation at a time. But that's not entirely true. We see a lot of great people working, but we've got a lot of volunteers across governments in Utah that don't necessarily have the expertise in finance that they have. So we provide training for them as they step in. You now have oversight as the chief financial officer for this entity. This is what that means. This is what you're looking for. So we provide training as well as oversight, as well as providing and performing those audits and statewide entities. So we have a lot of financial responsibility. That's over 1,600 agencies. It grows every day. The legislature is very creative in how many new entities they set up. We really appreciate that.
Yeah.
So if they create it, we have oversight over it financially, and we make sure that it operates the way it's supposed to operate.
I feel like on your LinkedIn About section, you say you have a passion for your family and chocolate. I'm with you on both of those. Congratulations.
Yep.
But the third one is honest and ethical government. Can you talk to us about how you do that? Or what's the right verb there? Implement that? Like, how do you get us to a more ethical government?
Yeah, so this is where transparency really comes into play. So we talked about the independence of the office, but we are also responsible for Transparent Utah. So we take all of those financial transactions for every entity across the state, and we put it in a searchable database for the taxpayers in Utah. So, for example, on the campaign trail, I was campaigning in a school district that had a bond on the ballot, and they would ask, oh, well, do they need this bond? And I said, well, let's look up the numbers and we can figure that out for you. Transparent Utah is a great resource. If you're looking for where does the money go in government? Do we fund enough money in this school district? We have on Project Kids on Transparent Utah, you can break it down right to how much they spend on lunches in that school district for each individual student. So we break it down to the student level and how much money per student it takes to educate a child in that school district, and then what is that money spent on? What is that dollar amount spent on, from transportation to education to lunches? So we break that down and make it usable information for the taxpayer. So we have all of the information. We try to make it usable for Utah.
Tina Cannon, first of all, I love that because I feel myself being a nerd and going on that website and learning about things.
And Tina's really good at this.
Yeah,
too.
no, I appreciate that. New Utah State Auditor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
I just wanted to pivot and stay with us, Tina, as we just do this, taking a look at what's happening right now in the former President Jimmy Carter's funeral. So the casket is now being put on the caisson, beautifully draped over the casket is an American flag. Let's listen.
Lots of flags flying around.
We're kind of hearing a little bit in the background what's happening there. I guess I thought I was going to hear a drum or some kind of music.
I think they've had music playing on and off as they've been moving the casket.
Yeah, and for those of you just listening, it is beautiful. Like this, the American flag, the flag of the military, all of the uniforms that they are wearing. The horses are beautiful. They're about to transfer this casket.
Don't you love how slowly they move through it? They show such respect as they do.
Yes, thank you. Right, not rushing anything. Let's listen, if that's okay, to kind of the noise. Yeah, I guess I'm not sure, Aaron or Tina, that they're going to come. I really was waiting for, like, the bugle sound, right? So,
well, I think they're getting ready to start the procession.
Yeah, so maybe we're going to let y'all go to a break. Come back with us. If there's a bugle, my goodness, we will listen to it all together. Tina Cannon, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And stay with us after the break.
Alpine Home Medical, we bring wellness home.
Are you on your feet a lot? When traveling, do you find yourself sitting for long periods of time? Hi, I'm Jay Broadbent with Alpine Home Medical, and we have compression stockings that can help you. Our compression stockings are designed to improve circulation, reduce swelling, and provide unmatched comfort. Come check out all the different styles and fabrics. These aren't your great-grandparents' compression stockings. That's why we're excited to offer an amazing deal. Buy 3 pairs of compression stockings and get a free care kit. That's right, 3 pairs of compression stockings and get a free care kit. Come into any of our 11 locations and invest in your health this winter by embracing the benefits of compression. For more details, visit us at alpinehomemedical.com. That's alpinehomemedical.com.
Alpine Home Medical, we bring wellness home.
Sign up for KSL Text Alerts. Get breaking news and traffic updates by texting the word news to 57500. Want access to exclusive contests? Text contest to 57500. Jazz fans, text the word jazz for breaking jazz updates. And Cougar fans, text BYU to 57500 for the latest on the Cougars. Message and data rates may apply.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down and get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
Hey, can you blow up some balloons for Jack's party?
I can't. I'm so congested.
You need Sinex Saline from Vicks.
Sinex Saline Nasal Spray.
Yeah, just Sinex. Breathe.
Sinex Saline instantly clears everyday congestion associated with colds and year-round allergies with a gentle, ultra-fine mist that's no mess and easy to control.
Daddy, we need more balloons.
On it.
Enjoy life's important moments without congestion. Try Sinex Saline from Vicks. Just Sinex. Breathe. Use as directed.
William is one of millions of Americans who uses GoodRx to save on the cost of their prescriptions.
My oldest daughter, Camilla, 2 days old, she had to have open heart surgery. All of a sudden, she's on 5 different medications. It adds up at the end of the month. Me and the pharmacist got so tight. She said, GoodRx save you a lot of money. Saving that extra $200-300 a month. We're able to do all these extra activities, so it puts less stress on our household, and it puts less stress on our pockets.
Download the free app or visit GoodRx.com and start saving today. GoodRx user compensated for their time. GoodRx is not insurance, but can be used used instead of insurance.
Boy, right after the holidays, everyone needs a little cash, right?
Oh, yes.
We have great news for you. Right now, UCCU, Utah Community Credit Union, will pay you for your auto loan and credit balances. So all you have to do is just transfer your auto loan or your credit card balance to UCCU. And on top of giving you a low interest rate, which will save you money, UCCU will give you 1% cash back up to $250 on every loan you transfer.
Amanda, as soon as I heard about this, I said, I'm in this exact situation. I transferred. I actually had to have 2 loans to get my car a year ago.
Yeah.
Long story. Got it consolidated into one, and they paid me 1% back for each thing. I've got 1 payment now instead of 2. It's so much easier, and it took me maybe basically an hour. I just went straight to the website. I applied. They said, you got to send me these documents. I did, and all of a sudden, within a couple of days, I had it all set.
This is how easy they are to work with, always looking for ways to help you and your family. You can find out more on the UCCU mobile banking app or just go to uccu.com/transfer. Utah Community Credit Union. You're going to love where you bank.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. This is Erin Ryder here with my good friend Leah Murray. We have a lot of fun here in these sessions together, Leah. We're continuing to watch the procession here for former President Jimmy Carter, and we may dip into that here as they now move towards the Capitol. But in the meantime, let's talk about some more local politics. Now, during last year's election, there was quite a bit of discussion and some controversy surrounding the 2 paths to the ballot, the caucus convention system or the signature gathering path. Now, things calmed down a little bit after the election, but now they are reigniting ahead of the next legislative session, thanks in part to comments from Utah Senator Mike Lee. So let's talk about this. Leah, I'm interested to know what your thoughts are on the caucus. You have some interesting thoughts on this, I think.
Yeah, so first let's talk about, for anyone who maybe isn't as politically nerdy as we are, that in the state of Utah, there are 2 paths to get onto the ballot as a nominee for a party. So
That's
we're
right.
not talking about the general, how do you get nominated by the party?
And let's even break this down further. It depends on the party and the party affiliation with which you are running.
Right. So can we pick on Republicans and then maybe
let's
pick
do Republicans
on
and Democrats.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one path is through the caucus convention. So a candidate can get their name on the primary election ballot through the convention. How this works is getting to know all of the delegates. This can be anything from dozens, depending on what office you're running for, to up to, 3,500, I think, around for statewide.
Yeah, I think the state Republican convention had around 4,000.
Okay, so we're in those kind of numbers. You attend the convention selects you as a nominee. For the record, that goes all the way back to 1828.
It's actually built into Utah's Constitution.
That's right. I mean, this is an old way of doing it. Andrew Jackson, this is the way he got people involved in politics. And I teach this to my students all the time. This is how things used to be 200 years ago. And I always say, Utah likes to be old school. So let's have something that is 200 years old, the way we do stuff. The other route's much more recent, right? So this route... let me pause if that's okay,
Yeah,
Erin.
let's go back to the
Let's go back to the processional. So what we have is former President Jimmy Carter's casket on the caisson, walking en route to the United States Capitol. Underneath me talking is the much nicer, more somber sound of the horse beat. And I do want to say, I keep calling this a funeral because I think of the whole thing as a funeral, but someone advised me off the air that maybe that's not right, and every single piece, Aaron's got a different name. So this is the processional, so the funeral procession heading into the Capitol where President Carter will lie in state.
Right, yes. And usually when they have figureheads like this lying in state, people from the public can come and pay their respects as well. So right now, that's what's happening. They're moving towards that.
All right. So I want to step back away from the somber, beautiful moment in our nation's, history, making history right now, and back to the politics a little bit here on Inside Sources. So Aaron, just pivot with me in this abrupt way. All right. So you can become, through the convention, a candidate. Or this more recent way of doing it is you can gather signatures. So at this point, if you are a candidate, so you're Erin Ryder and you ran for office, for the record, you all, I never have, so she's much more an expert in this lived experience than I am. You declare your candidacy. You say when you do that you're going to gather signatures. You figure out what your signature requirement is, So that's like For, again, if it's a statewide office, it's going to be much more signatures, geographically distributed.
Yeah, our statewide, if you're running as a Republican in Utah for a statewide office like auditor that we just had Tina Cannon here for, or governor, then, or Senate, you're looking at 28,000 signatures that you need from registered Republicans in this state.
And in your most recent race, which was Salt Lake County, how many people did you have to get?
Well, I actually didn't gather signatures
Okay,
for
my
race
apologies.
for
I'm
county
sorry.
mayor.
Okay.
I went through the convention process. Now, candidates can do both. They can go through convention and gather signatures. They can just do one or the other. A lot of candidates will do both. A lot of candidates just go through convention. It's kind of unusual to have a candidate only do signatures and not also go through convention because there's a lot of benefit to going through the convention. And, I'm speaking from my own experience as a Republican, but particularly on the Republican side, if you come out into that primary race, you have more access to a lot of support from the party if you've gone through the convention and gotten at least 40% of the vote at the convention. So, I went just through the convention this last time, came out with about 80% of the vote. I have gathered signatures in the past before I ran for Salt Lake County mayor. There's a lot to be said for the benefits of the caucus convention system. In fact, Senator Mike Lee, this is part of what, his point is and kind of what's kicked this off. He put a post on X that said political parties and never the government should decide how they will select their candidates. Now, this is a whole thing because in 2014, the legislature came out with a bill, SB 54, that allowed signatures as an alternate path to the primary ballot.
So basically what I hear Senator Lee saying is that the Utah State Legislature has no say in how nominees get on the ballot.
Yeah, or shouldn't have a say.
I'm not sure I agree with him. So, but I'm not sure I disagree. So when you earlier were teasing me, you're like, you've got an interesting point of view on this. And man, I'll say something that is anathema among some crowds of people here in the state of Utah. I love the caucus convention system. I love the idea of going to your neighborhood caucus, right, and having a conversation with people who live in your neighborhood, discussing issues. Because I'm going to tell you, I'm very civically engaged, Aaron, and my biggest concern about this country is we're not doing things like building shared identity. We are only in our own little silos of information howling at the moon.
Yeah.
So what I love about a caucus is you have to talk to other human beings to be able to make decisions about candidates.
And it is truly a representative, it's part of our representative form of government. You go to caucus, you elect delegates who go to represent your neighborhood and to carry your voice as a neighborhood in the selection of nominees for political office. I will say from my own experience, it's really, delegates are so committed to this and really ask some really insightful, great questions. And you can get so invested in your community by going through the caucus convention system. And I do love that about the caucus convention
Right.
system.
So then, but I am persuaded, because some of our friends have scolded me about this opinion, and I am persuaded that maybe Tuesday night at 7 p.m. is not available to everyone, right? So some people are home or they're working. Some people are deployed in the military. And you're basically saying to those people, you don't matter as much, right? So while I love the caucus convention system, I understand why we should be thoughtful about maybe being more accessible. Right,
Yeah,
for
I think
different
there's no
people.
question that there is room for improvement there. And, we're going to continue to track this as we move on and get into the legislative session. We may see some bills coming up with this. So stay tuned. Coming up in the second hour, we're going to chat about two new elected officials, both members of the state school board. And we're also going to dig into Elon Musk's influence on European politics and some changes coming to Meta. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good afternoon. It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Maria Shaleos. KSL's top story this hour. New statistics show 1/3 of last year's road fatalities in Utah weren't behind the wheel of a car.
UDOT and the Department of Public Safety say it's pedestrians, motorcyclists, and bike riders that made up 1/3 of all deaths on Utah roads.
It's not just city streets, downtown Salt Lake. They're out in the suburbs. They're out on the country roads.
That was UDOT spokesperson John Gleason, who believes it's on us to turn that stat around.
It's on all of us as drivers and anybody who's out on the road to watch out for these people.
More standouts in their 2024 report. Motorcycle rider deaths hit a 15-year high, and 40% of all road fatalities involve someone not wearing a seatbelt. Eric Cabrera, KSL News Radio.
Our top national story this hour from ABC News. It's the start of 3 days of memorials in Washington, D.C. for former President Jimmy Carter. A team of 6 horses now transporting the casket to the U.S. Capitol, where Carter will lie until Thursday's state funeral at the Washington National Cathedral. Taking a look at your money at this moment. Boy, it was a rough day for the markets, ending in negative territory. The Dow was down by 178 points at the close, to end at 42,528. The NASDAQ down by 375 points. That is nearly a full 2%. Coming up, weather's going to be nice for the week, and then the weekend there's going to be a change. We'll check the forecast coming up next. KSL News Time, 2:01.
Mornings are for recharging.
And they're for starting your day right.
We volunteer to join you in the car. Get news and weather at 102.7 FM during the most important part of your day.
Andy and Amanda, each morning between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
There she is, founder and CEO. High five.
Dave can't stop celebrating with every business owner in town.
All right, Baker Man. High five.
He's sharing the excitement of big savings with the
Right now, the FBI is giving a press conference about the Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas. Let's listen in.
For some of the significant updates, I'm going to turn this over to Assistant Sheriff Dory Corrin to go through those processes. Dory?
All right, good afternoon. I'm Assistant Sheriff Dory Corrin at the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I oversee our Homeland Security and Investigative Services group. As I mentioned last time, that includes our counterterrorism unit, which is one of the key elements working this case. As the sheriff pointed out, we have a few developments, one on the video analysis and the video evidence that we've recovered. The other is on the physical evidence that we've recovered from the vehicle, and finally the digital forensics. So I'll begin with the video analysis. We now have video footage that we're able to confirm that the suspect did prepare and stage for his planned attack. You'll see the suspect here in the video. He'll end up pulling out a can of racing fuel from the back of the vehicle, and then he'll start pouring that racing fuel onto the back where there's contents of explosive materials. You'll see that in just a moment here. It's a white can. We did recover that can from the vehicle and did confirm that it was racing fuel. In addition to this video, after you see him pouring it, you're going to see as the vehicle drives away, you'll end up seeing fuel leaking from the vehicle, which is consistent with what you're seeing him pour. So he'll seal the vehicle right here, and then he'll start driving off, and you'll start seeing traces of fuel that's dripping from the back of the vehicle. You'll see other parts here, and you guys can take a closer look after the fact, too, to try to see the dark spots versus the spots that were dry before. In addition to this video, we also have additional evidence that includes showing that the vehicle was leaking upon his arrival to Trump Towers. So in just a moment here, you'll start seeing right there, you'll see a trail of liquid falling from the back of the vehicle. And you'll see a before and after comparison in just a moment of the valet right before he drives onto the valet area and after, which will show you the fuel leaking from the vehicle. The other thing is there's a video here that we're going to show you that will show that his hands are on the steering wheel as he's driving up to the valet. There was some conversation about whether the vehicle was in self-driving mode. We've already addressed that in terms of the technical data that we collected, but also you can see that his hands are on the steering wheel as he's pulling up. And then finally, we're going to show a video here, and ATF will elaborate on this a little further in their briefing, but of the explosion that occurs. You're going to see frame by frame, you'll see an initial flash prior to the larger explosion. So we'll pause right there. That's the initial flash that happens right before the large explosion. You're going to see a still in a moment. Right there's the initial flash. And then following that is the large explosion. The other thing that you're seeing circled in red there is, we believe, fumes from all of the racing fuel that was poured inside the vehicle and on the back. It ignited first, which is consistent with the briefing that you're going to get from the ATF on how the actual explosive materials were ignited. The next area I want to talk about briefly is the physical evidence recovered from the vehicle. There were 3 cart casings, .50 caliber expended cart casings that were recovered. You can see images from the forensics there. What's very important about these cart casings in terms of what happened in that vehicle, 2 of the cart casings had primers that were burned out due to the intense heat. This is consistent with the type of explosion that we believe occurred, and again, ATF will expand a little bit more on that. However, 1 of the 3 cart casings, as you can see, shows that the primer was punched, which basically means that it was shot through a gun, which is consistent with what we believe happened, that he ended up using the firearm to commit suicide. In addition to that, just want to revisit the firearm damage. There were 2 firearms that were recovered, the AR pistol and the Desert Eagle handgun. On the AR pistol, we found that it was inoperable, so we were limited on the ballistics analysis that can be done. However, we did find that there was a damaged cartridge inside the AR pistol that looks like it was damaged from the intense heat, which would have caused the round to go off, but it was not fired by the gun. Secondly, the Desert Eagle handgun, when we did the forensic analysis on that, we did find that there was 1 unfired cartridge inside of the firearm, which is consistent with the firearm having been discharged and the reload happening, putting another bullet into the chamber. The other area, just very quickly on the explosives, our lab did do some tests and they did confirm the presence of ammonium nitrate and aluminum. Our financial records, his journal entries, a variety of other things confirm that he did purchase what he believed was tannerite, but it was a different form of exploding targets that has has ammonium nitrate and aluminum in it, which is one of the explosive materials that he had. Transition over to the digital forensics. We had briefly mentioned that there was a note in his phone that was titled surveillance log or surveil log, and it was more of a journal of activities. It did point out people he thought were following him at various instances. We will work on trying to get as much of that information out as possible, but just so you can kind of have an idea here, there's kind of a little bit of a summary. So, for example, on December 27th, you can see he talks about purchasing the firearms, in particular the Desert Eagle and the AR pistol. On December 28th, the following day, just an excerpt for you, he talks about picking up the Cybertruck as a rental and purchasing exploding targets. On December 29th, he talks about purchasing camping gear as well as white gas, which we believe is the fuel. On December 31st, he talks about reaching a decision point, and he talks about committing to the Grand Canyon, that he plans on conducting surveillance at the glass walkway and identifying a launch route. The sheriff had mentioned this earlier. We wanted to be able to provide additional details to you on that topic. Continuing on the digital forensics, well, actually, I will just reference that. When he talks about the Grand Canyon, that was on December 31st. We don't know exactly why he changed his plans from going to the Grand Canyon to potentially launch off of that glass skywalk, and why he chose Trump Towers. We're still looking at that. But ultimately, as we all know with what happened, there was a change in plans, and he showed up here at the Trump Towers on the following day on January 1st. Now, moving on to that 6-page manifesto that the sheriff talked about. This document was found as part of the digital forensic analysis of his phone. There's a variance of grievances and a constant evolution of his plans or intents of what he wanted to do. There's mentions of political and social and cultural issues to include criticism of the current administration. He also does write in there that he was super high on weed and drinking, which we are still working to confirm. And then he discusses the Cybertruck being used as a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. He also says that he has graphic encounters from his military experience that replay in his head over and over, and that now he feels like he's a shell of a human being with nothing to live for. This is important not only because it points out the suicidal component, but it also talks about the mental health that he was dealing with, mental health issues that he was dealing with. Just continuing on that manifesto, a few other excerpts for now is he discusses the concerns about the withdrawal from Afghanistan and losing his teammates, which again builds upon that potential PTSD that we're referring to. He does transition at some point and talks about being concerned of the media labeling him as a terrorist and that he had no intent on killing anyone else aside from himself. But finally, one of the last points in there, because this constant flow back and forth of different thoughts, he does talk about his intent to make this as public as possible and that he is loaded up on boom and quotations and fireworks for New Year's. Moving on to another part of the digital forensics, the sheriff talked about how the suspect in this case used ChatGPT to plan out his attack. You're going to see a few of the entries that he posted. This is chronological by date, but he basically starts using ChatGPT, which is a generative AI, to be able to get information on how to conduct this particular plot. So ultimately, you'll see that he looks at trying to figure out the amount of explosives needed in order to conduct the explosion he was looking to cause. He also talks about, in the next set of questions, you'll see he's trying to figure out where to buy fireworks and how much of it to buy. He looks at the equivalence of those fireworks and how they compare to TNT and other types of explosive material. On this next set of questions, there's a focus on the velocity of the bullet fired from the firearm and determining whether that would ignite the explosives. This is an important component, as you'll see when the ATF talks about the amount of explosives that he had and how they exploded, and a lot of those actually not detonating. Ultimately, that has to do with the research on ChatGPT, determined that he needed at least 2,000 feet per second velocity on the firearm in order to be able to actually cause a full detonation of all the explosives he had. And then finally, on the last one, he talks about this more about the amount of material he needs, and also interest in how to buy a phone without providing any personal identifying information. And then finally here, just on the last piece on the digital forensics, we talked a little bit about the data recovered from the Tesla. There were 3 devices recovered. Originally, we were talking about the SDMI chip and the thumb drive. Technically, there are 3 components in there that we're able to try to analyze forensically. The SDMI chip only contains mechanical data, does not contain videos. That we did look at, and Tesla is proprietary to Tesla. They are helping us try to recover any kind of technical information about the vehicle at the time of the explosion. The USB drive is where videos are stored. That was damaged. We were able to pull partial videos, which we talked about, and we showed you the video from Kingman, Arizona. And then there's the restraint control model, which is very common to a lot of vehicles, where you have a mechanism in there to be able to record crash data. We did recover that. As of now, we don't have any valuable information from it because it did not trigger a crash. But most importantly, there's been conversation about in-cabin video and why don't we have video that shows exactly what happened inside the vehicle. As described to us from Tesla, the in-cabin video only records when you're in full self-driving mode, and it does not save that data. So it actually is just a live recording that basically happens to alarm the driver if they're falling asleep or something like that while it's in full self-driving mode. We know through the forensic analysis and through the work with Tesla that the vehicle was not in self-driving mode, so this feature would not have been activated, which is why we don't have video footage of the in-cabin activity. With that said, I'd like to transition to our partners. Both the FBI and ATF have been instrumental, and as the sheriff pointed out, it's been a collaborative effort that also expands to a variety of other partners who have helped us along the way. I'll turn it over to ATF Assistant Special Agent Kenny Cooper to go into the explosives.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kenny Cooper. I'm an Assistant Special Agent in charge at ATF San Francisco Field Division. One of the main goals of ATF in this investigation is to provide an assessment of the design, construction, and the effects of this explosive event. Our preliminary assessment includes the following. An explosion did occur with up to 60 plus pounds of pyrotechnic material. This is an explosion and not a detonation. At this time, there has been no purchase records or physical evidence recovered from the scene that indicate any type of remote control, remote detonation, or sophisticated timed initiation system was used. The initial explosion is a fuel-air explosion. It in turn ignites the fireworks and other explosive materials that were inside the Cybertruck. The evidence supports and suggests a large portion of almost 20 gallons of fuel were poured over the fireworks and the explosive materials that were inside the cargo compartments of the Cybertruck. To date, our National Response Team experts have been able to calculate a minimum net explosive weight of 60.2 pounds of explosive material. This material is a combination of exploding targets, smokeless powder, consumer fireworks, and other aerial shells. This explosion was enhanced by Coleman Fuel, VP Racing Fuel, MSR Super Fuel, and 70 pounds of Eagle Magnum lead shot, essentially bird shot. The estimated 60.2 pounds of explosive weight is a minimum amount of purchase based on purchase records and the residue that remained from the event. That true total could be much higher. In fact, we still have investigative leads as far as the purchase material that once we have those calculations will change. The initiating flame to these explosives could have been from several possible sources and cannot be confirmed or eliminated at this point of this investigation. Due to the near simultaneous fatal gunshot, fatal gunshot, and device initiation, it is possible that the muzzle flash alone was an initiation source to the fuel air explosion. Other possibilities that cannot be ruled out.
So I want to pivot away from that press conference in Las Vegas about the Cybertruck explosion. And now let's go back, if you don't mind, Aaron, to the Carter funeral procession.
Yeah.
So what I want to say is this is a head of state event. This is not political. This is not partisan. This is America in a shared identity kind of moment. So to me, it rings very similar. And maybe many of our listeners don't remember, so maybe they watch The Crown and this is how they know these images. But it really reminds me of the Princess Diana funeral, right? That vision of the horse-drawn carriage with her casket and her children, which kills me to this day, walking behind that. They were very young boys at that time. This is what this looks like, right? So you've got this funeral procession up to one of our most important buildings, if not our most important building in the country, the nation's capital. You can hear underneath my voice, that's the military marching in this funeral procession. Very much, these are the moments where you pause. Oh, you can hear, the calls, right? The work that they are doing here in this funeral procession. Aaron, you actually spent time in D.C. and lived there.
I did.
Can you tell us, when we're looking at this, where would people be watching, do you think, Aaron? Or is this very private? Is there security there? Kind of describe what you see, given that you know the area well.
Yeah, it looks like they definitely have security in place. Not a lot of people just sort of standing there watching. And I think that's not a surprise, given that we're right on the heels of January 6th. We're right on the heels of things that have happened in New Orleans and Vegas, like the press conference we just came from. Like you said, this is a head of state event. I was in D.C. when Justice Scalia of the Supreme Court passed away, so they did a similar kind of thing. He wasn't the head of the country, but he was a member of our Supreme Court. So they had him lay in state at the Capitol building. And anyway, so it just, it's very reminiscent of that. And what they're doing right now is the procession has gotten to the Capitol building. They're getting ready to transfer him into the Capitol, where he will lie in state in the rotunda for people to come and pay their respects. And it looks like there are people in the Capitol or in the rotunda waiting for that as well. Probably members of Congress, different, leaders within the country who are there waiting for this. So, they're on the the east side of the Capitol building. So it's kind of the back side of the mall where they've driven up. They've come up along the south side, along the mall there, and come in on the east side here of the Capitol building, where they'll head up the stairs and go into the rotunda.
Yeah, I think the nation's capital, this building is beautiful.
It is.
I just visited a student who currently works, a former student, now he's graduated, who currently works in the Capitol and was in the rotunda. It's a beautiful place.
It's beautiful, yes. When I was working on the Senate Finance Committee, we would go, at the time, Senator Orrin Hatch was the chair of the Finance Committee. And because he was also President Pro Tem of the Senate at the time, he had an office in the Capitol building, which is, most senators don't. They have it in the adjacent buildings. And so we would often go into the Capitol itself there because he had an office there. And anyway, so I walked those halls many, many times, spent time in the rotunda. I had friends and family who would come into town. We'd take them on tours of the Capitol.
That's right. Basically, you did for them what my former student did for me, right?
That's
Show
right.
you.
Uh-huh.
And a little bit, this is the people's building, right? This is the people's branch. And You all, if you ever get a chance to visit D.C., find someone that you know there. Have one of our members of
I was
Congress.
gonna say, yeah, just contact your member of Congress.
Get you in for a tour, and you can kind of see just how beautiful these rooms are, and how, for me, it's very much like we keep saying, it's not political. Like politics happens there, but the building is historical, right? It is.
You know, one of my favorite stories, Leah, is one of my very favorite presidents is James Garfield. And one of the things I love about his time, he was a general during the Civil War. He was a Republican, and he became president at a time when the country was really still trying to recover from
Very
all the
divided,
damage
yeah.
that had been done during the Civil War. And his death was unexpected in a lot of ways. He counts as one of our presidents who was assassinated. Very, very interesting story, but really was just sort of beloved by the country as a whole. And his death was one of the events that started to bring the nation back together as a whole. And I love that because he was there to do the right job, to do right by the people. And so I think, to your point, these moments can remind us that whether you are a Republican or a Democrat or an entirely different political persuasion, watching a former head of state, a former leader of the country, is a moment where we can all come together and appreciate that we are all Americans at the end of the day.
Yeah, so we're watching this and the former President Jimmy Carter's casket arriving at the U.S. Capitol. Right now, there are horses drawing that caisson with the casket on it, and they're headed up the way, Aaron, you described, to stairs, right? I imagine.
Yeah, they're coming up the hill just to the south of the Capitol building right now.
And then I have to imagine somebody is going to carry him up those stairs. I don't think it is the case that the horses are going to ride up those stairs, right? I mean, a little bit. I'm watching this and trying to describe. Yeah.
No, I think they'll probably have military, pallbearers carry the casket up. But, I guess we'll find out.
Right. And what I thought was really interesting when I was visiting the Capitol, there is a space there, and you would know this better than I, where they expected George Washington to lie in state forever. Right? There's, what is it called? The tomb or the crypt? Maybe it's called the crypt.
The crypt.
And George Washington, of course, said, no, I think I would rather be at Mount Vernon,
That's
which,
right.
of course, was the right answer. But I want to just make clear, we draw a thread in our history, right? From George Washington all the way to Jimmy Carter, that these are people who sacrificed quite a bit to serve our country. They all are deserving of our respect, and these are the moments. Thank you for that story about Garfield. I think I love him as a president, right? Arthur's one of my favorite, who is the one who succeeded him.
Also very interesting
Yeah,
story.
one of my favorite stories to talk about. But these are the moments where we should remember who we are as a group and our collective. Does that make sense? Like as a community.
I think one of my favorite things that I did in D.C., there was a podcast that the Washington Post put out called Presidential, and it went through kind of a little bit of the backstory of each of the presidents leading up to the 2016 election. And watching that, or listening to that, they talked a little bit more about the lives of the presidents than almost anything else. And it was fascinating to watch the shape and the direction of the country through the lives of the men who led it, and their wives and their families and all that kind of stuff. So, this is just another marker of that, watching another president who had, no doubt, an impact on the country. His work after his time in office was in some ways almost as significant and influential, and is what he's remembered for in many ways as much as anything he did while in office.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think on my wall, I have a picture that has all of the presidents' faces, right? And you kind of go, I don't even really know all their parties. Well, kind of I do, as someone who likes politics and history, right? But that fades. The politics fades.
Yeah.
Right? The fact that he served, his face will always be on that picture that I have of all the presidents. That's going to stay current.
Right.
We're just watching the ceremony now. Oh, this is Jeff Kaplan. Hi.
Welcome, Jeff. Thank you for joining us.
We were watching in the newsroom right now. There are representatives of each branch of the military standing astride the horse-drawn carriage that's leading the former president to the Capitol building, where a ceremony awaits as they walk the steps and he'll lie in state. I know you have been watching this through the afternoon, talking about his legacy as presidency in the years afterwards.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, what do you think, Jeff? Do you think that he's much more about his presidency like 50 years ago? Or do you think his post-presidency speaks so much more to his character and the man himself?
I am one of the few people around these days. 70% of people were not alive when he was president. But I remember those
Wait, pause,
years.
because I was, you were,
Yeah.
she was not.
Being alive and being 2 years old are two different things. 70% don't remember his presidency in real time.
Okay.
But I recall as a teenager that he was reviled.
Yeah.
It was that malaise speech that he made in which he never used that word, where he kind of gave a sermon and talked about the American people as if they had done wrong and need to change their ways. There was profound resentment, but it seems that over the years, though we remember it, it's been erased by the good works over time.
That's right. It fades, right? What we were frustrated by then fades in memory. I want to just say that what we just saw is the horse with the riderless horse, Aaron and Jeff, right? So in a funeral procession, you've got a horse that does not have a person on it. That always makes my heart just clench a little bit, right? It's very sad.
You can hear the horse's hooves against the brick leading up to the Capitol building and the steps where the ceremony will take place right now. But, going back, as much as he was reviled at the time, there are a lot of people who look at that infamous malaise speech now and say, he had a point. It was all about how we were entering an era in 1978, 79, where greed is good. We were heading into the 1980s, and he thought there was something more spiritual that this country needed to be about. And at the time, there was so much resentment. But in retrospect, he did have a point. We weren't willing to listen.
That's interesting. It's always easier to listen decades later, maybe, Jeff, right?
Half a century.
A half a
Yeah.
century
A half
later.
a century later.
Did either of you ever attend one of his Sunday school classes?
No.
No.
I did not either. But I know some people who did, and I kind of love that about him, that after his time as President of the United States, maybe the most influential political position in the world, he just went back to teaching Sunday school.
Right. Now we are watching, his family has entered the rotunda, so you watch them go up the stairs, and now we're watching the process of them getting him from the caisson into the rotunda where he will lie in state.
With his longevity, it's hard to remember that his children are elderly. His daughter, little Amy Carter, in the White House. We remember Amy Carter scampering around the grounds and trying to have a normal childhood, going to public school, which was unheard of for a president's child. She's now 57 years old and lives a very, very quiet life. There was some question whether she would speak at the funeral because she sought so much privacy after leaving the White House as a child.
Right. Well, can you imagine? We were discussing earlier that the families sacrifice so much, Jeff, right? It's not just the president that does. And oh my goodness, Amy Carter, the media did not do her much service when she was a child. And I would imagine, I understand her going to be as private as possible.
The more modern version was Chelsea Clinton, who took her share of abuse as a 12-year-old. Amy Carter was younger. A very plain girl, always kept away from the press except for, the stray image of family. But she seemed to want nothing to do with all the publicity and the bright lights. She merely wanted to go to public school like a normal kid.
Right.
The ceremony is live outside the Capitol right now on KSL News Radio. Obviously, this is not built for radio. It's a somber moment that's about the visual. We're here a bit handicapped trying to explain what's happening right now, but we can do the best we can.
Right. Do you, Jeff, remember, because you aged yourself earlier in this conversation, how many of these kind of head of state funerals have you been covering over the years?
Over the years,
Yeah.
well, really, every one that's happened. Except Richard Nixon didn't have a state funeral. He opted to go the more private route.
All right, so we are going to take a break now. We'll be back. Oh, Maria Shaleas is taking over.
2:30 at KSL News Radio. Good afternoon. I'm Maria Shaleas. KSL's top story this hour is breaking news. A plea deal has seemingly fallen apart in the Nicholas Rossi trial. KSL News Radio's Becky Bruce is live with the latest. Becky?
Maria, this just got confirmed moments ago as Rossi appeared on video conference for a pretrial hearing. He's the man accused of faking his own death and fleeing to Scotland to avoid rape charges here in Utah. In just the last few minutes, prosecutors and Rossi's attorneys confirmed they have not been able to reach an agreement on that plea deal, and state attorneys say they're not going to offer another deal in the future. This is the Utah County case against Rossi. As you may recall, he also faces charges in Salt Lake County. The Utah County case now headed to trial in September. Live, Becky Bruce, KSL News Radio.
And as you've been hearing on Inside Sources and Developing News, the body of President Jimmy Carter has arrived at our nation's capital to lie in state. ABC's Ann Compton covered several presidents, including the Carter White House.
He really, when he arrived in Washington, one of the things he wanted to do was to make a real break and a new start for the country. And the kind of issues he wanted, certainly racial harmony was a legacy that he wanted to leave.
Carter is being taken to the Capitol Rotunda, where he will lie until his funeral on Thursday. We will continue to bring you the latest right here on KSL News Radio. Taking a look at your money at this moment, the Dow closed the day down 178 points, nearly 0.5%, sitting at 42,528. The NASDAQ down by 375, and the S&P 500 down by 66 points. Good-looking week of weather, but the weekend things are changing. An update of your forecast and the traffic coming up next.
A reminder about the simplest way to get updated for your day.
Hit your KSL preset when you jump in the car, and we'll take care of the rest.
Hear key news updates and traffic reports.
Andy and Amanda from 5 to 9 in your car.
KSL News Radio at 102.7 FM.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
Do you find yourself stuck in a timeshare? Get the real facts about the timeshare industry and your options for cancellation. Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group, has put together a free information guide that reveals the secrets the timeshare industry doesn't want you to know, including the 5 ways to get rid of your timeshare. Call now and get this timeshare cancellation guide absolutely free.
Call 800-838-6161. That's 800-838-6161. 800-838-6161.
This is the story of the one who, as a maintenance specialist for a historic high-rise, knows that vintage charm historically needs constant attention. Which is why when it's time to upgrade turn-of-the-century mechanicals, they turn to Grainger. With easy access to 1 million-plus products and the scale to deliver when and where you need them. The right tools and supplies are never far away. So the one can keep that vintage building running like new. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You wouldn't know it, but most financial advisors are put in a box. I'm Jeff Jr. from Trajan Wealth, and I want to provide you a little insight about financial advisors. Most financial advisors have to sell what their company requires them to sell, and many advisors have to only adhere to what's called a suitability standard. A suitability standard is a limited standard of care, not requiring what's sold to be best just suitable. Advisors with this loose standard often have limited investment and product selection. Trajan Wealth is held to a fiduciary standard, which is the highest standard of care in the advisory business. And that's just one of the many reasons we have billions of dollars under our care and attract clients from other advisors. Raise your standards today and call Trajan Wealth. Call 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
If you have unfiled taxes or are in debt to the IRS, this is important news. Did you know the IRS has programs specifically designed to help people struggling with tax debt? Powerful tax assistance programs that can save you thousands if you qualify. No one knows these programs better than the experts at Optima Tax Relief, America's most trusted tax resolution firm, A-rated by the Better Business Bureau. Their award-winning team of tax attorneys attorneys and licensed professionals have resolved over $1 billion of tax debt for their clients. One call to Optima can start the process, helping to end your worries about wage garnishment, asset seizure, and other IRS actions. Make sure you're getting the best options to solve your tax problems. Call the experts at Optima today for a free confidential consultation.
Call 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Traffic and weather together. It's brought to you by My Style Checking from Mountain America Credit Union. Let's check in now with Ricky Meese.
We do have a right lane block due to an accident eastbound on the 21st South Freeway at 5600 West at the on-ramp. You're able to get through. It's just a little bit of a tight squeeze to the left. Whipple Service Champions, your cooling, heating, plumbing, drains, and electrical specialist. Whipple that away. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
30% chance of showers over the weekend. The rest of the week looking very nice. Right now, 43 degrees, a lot of sunshine. I'm Maria Chaleos from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We are Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. A new presidency, new state leaders, and a new legislative session. Utah's top political experts discuss the day's biggest stories. Only on KSL News Radio.
Hi, I'm Erin Ryder here with Leah Murray. Welcome back to Inside Sources. We are continuing our coverage of former President Jimmy Carter's procession to the U.S. Capitol here. So we are... Leah, tell us what we're seeing here right now.
Right. So we are still outside of the Capitol, and a little bit I want to say, man, this is hard to do on radio, right? Because it's beautiful, beautiful visual. There are horses. The people are wearing uniforms that are absolutely gorgeous. The building is stunning. The sky is beautiful, and I'm trying to do in any way an artist's job of explaining this. Luckily, we've got Becky Bruce with us, and maybe she can do better than I am. But what we're waiting for is for the casket to be moved into the rotunda, and I think we've been sitting on this for a minute.
Yeah, so what's happening right now is they're getting ready to go in. You've got the casket itself sitting on a caisson being pulled by, it looks like 6 black horses, and it's an honor guard that has surrounded the casket right now. Looks like mostly Marines wearing their dress blues, so super formal military uniform going on right now. And there's a little bit of pomp and circumstance and ceremony to make sure that the late president is honored in the right way as he's brought into that rotunda, where a number of dignitaries are standing by to pay their respects before eventually the rotunda gets open to the public for a viewing that'll take place until the funeral on Thursday.
You know, one of the privileges of the presidency is that you write the script for your own funeral. So this is all as per Jimmy Carter's wishes, written many, many years ago while he was president and updated as he saw fit through the years, he and his family. So what we're seeing was scripted by the former president himself as he's about to be brought up the steps to lie in state at the Capitol.
How much precedent is involved in that? You know, is it purely the wishes and desires of each president, or do they kind of get to write their own show?
They get to write their own show. If you think of perhaps the one that comes to mind most easily was the amazing, picturesque funeral for Ronald Reagan. If you remember, they brought his body to California so that he would be lowered to the ground right at the moment of sunset as the sun slipped from the sky on the West Coast. And it was very powerful. But each president has their own. We expect that, given this is Jimmy Carter, that there's going to be some humility to the proceedings, including the ceremony that takes place at the National Cathedral on Thursday.
Right. And by the way, we will be airing that live on Thursday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning here. Our time is when that's expected to happen. So between now and then, though, most of the focus is going to be on this Capitol Rotunda, where there's going to be a chance for the public to come by and pay their respects. But first, we've got a little ceremony this afternoon. We understand Vice President Kamala Harris is expected to speak shortly as well.
So, Becky, tell us who is in the Capitol right now.
It's pretty much a who's who of Washington, D.C. at the moment. You're looking at top leaders of Congress, top leaders of various departments, people who worked for the Carter administration are there. Essentially, anybody who's everybody in Washington right now, sitting in office and formerly.
Do we know if there's anything partisan about this? So I don't mean to interject with some politics, but if former President Carter gets to write the script, does he also get to say who gets to be invited, Becky, do you think? Or do you think it is, right, there's kind of like a standard list of who is in these positions right now?
Yeah, usually it's up to the attendees whether they are taking part or not so much, the late president. I don't know if he left that specificity in his instructions as to how he wanted to be remembered. I do know that there's very much in recent years been discussion about, will President-elect Trump attend this particular gathering?
Anybody remember ever going to this rotunda? Have you been to Washington, D.C. and stood under it ever?
Yes.
Yes. It's powerful.
Yeah, that is the word that I was thinking. It is such a powerful experience to stand in the middle of that rotunda and look up to the soaring heights up above and think of what has taken place below those soaring heights. The many heroes, the presidents who've laid in state in that room, and here again now. I mean, it's a somber experience to be there on the average workday. The most recent time I was there, I was on a tour with Senator Mike Lee, who was showing us around this and that, and, offering we could glean a few details you might not have known from the experience. But while he was talking, it was easy to beam out and just think, oh my goodness, I'm here. And that's the kind of hallowed place it is that Jimmy Carter will lie in state over the next 2 days.
Yeah, no, it was interesting. One of the visuals that we've been watching today, I was asking Aaron, do you think that's a drone or is there a camera? Because, Jeff, it was on top of the rotunda, looking down on the people sitting there. And even that visual makes you realize, right, just how hallowed and how dignified that space is.
Somebody had to climb up to put that camera up there at some point, and it's apparently a nerve-wracking trip on a tiny, thin staircase going up. It's not the most pleasant experience, but the view is amazing once you're up there.
Very.
And it's a very impressive place because you've got artwork all around the interior walls of the rotunda showcasing moments from American history, from the Revolution, all that kind of stuff. So it very much is, kind of a pinnacle place of American history.
Yeah, and just to put us outside the Capitol here for a moment, we are still watching this military honor guard with the casket on its caisson, waiting to go in. My best guess right now is that they're actually waiting for Kamala Harris. There's Secret Service to arrange and her schedule to get around and, streets of Washington to navigate to get her in position for what they're going to do next. So I would imagine a lot of what we're waiting for is kind of that Secret Service wrangling.
A lot of people might be watching this and saying, logistically, they need to get their act together, but everything is closed around there. The government offices are closed this afternoon, I believe, and they have all the time in the world because what is there other than this in D.C. today? By the way, didn't they have a snowstorm yesterday? I barely see any evidence.
It turns out, the city was more or less shut down by that storm, and here a day later, they're efforting this huge pomp and circumstance.
Yeah, I think a little bit the universe delivered on that, Jeff, right? That it is the case. Today is just a beautiful day in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I'm not wrong. I mean, 9,000 flights were canceled, many of them out of D.C. yesterday. The entire government shut down. The schools were shut down. And sure, there's a little smattering of snow around, but it doesn't seem to be causing even a hiccup to this ceremony. Washington is focused on making this right for the former president's last visit.
Yeah, and something really interesting about this honor guard, too. I don't know how many people realize this, but President Carter will not be left alone now until he is laid to rest in the ground. So there will be somebody in an honor guard formation standing watch over his casket for the entire time that he's going to be in the Capitol Rotunda.
So that would be once they close the public viewing.
There would even be somebody there in the middle of the night.
Even when it's just the janitors and security, he'll have an honor guard.
Yeah. And fun fact, somber fact, I've only had the privilege to interview one president in my tenure here at KSL, and it was President Carter. He had just published a book. This was 2012. And I have to say, I'm in the grand scheme of an actual former president talking to you, I'm small potatoes, I'm just some random reporter from Salt Lake City that he's never met before in his life, but he could not have been more polite and gracious and treated me on the phone as though I was the most important person in the world for that 5 minutes.
Oh, I love that because I think, first of all, I love that for you, but I think that speaks to his character. We were discussing earlier that after being president, he went back and teaches Sunday school, right? Mm-hmm. So this is not a man Right, who is into the pomp and circumstance that we are seeing, a very humble soul. I love that.
And he, you've seen videos over the last little bit of him on airplanes where he's taking the time to shake the hands of everybody on the airplane.
Delta Airlines said every time he's been on one of our planes, he went up and down the aisle shaking the hand of every person who extended theirs to him. Every time.
Yeah, it looks like we can see just the flags blowing in the wind now outside the Capitol as they're waiting for whatever signal to go inside to the Capitol Rotunda. I'm not seeing a lot of movement there yet, but I guarantee that whatever we see happen will be done with absolute care and honor.
And it looks like the pallbearers have arrived as well, so they're getting into position, getting ready to move him into the Rotunda.
Honor guard.
Yeah, you can hear the honor guard being called to order now. So in addition to the pallbearers, you have this honor guard of folks with the flags and the rifles standing ready to escort the casket in. We've also got people lining the steps of the Capitol now. Were they there a moment ago?
No, I think those are the pallbearers. I think they just arrived.
So they've got the 6 on either side of the or 8 rather on either side of the casket, but then there's a line of what looks like, again, either Marines or Army in dress blues lining the steps on either side of the path they're going to take up the stairs to the Capitol Rotunda.
And once again, hear the hooves of the horse outside the Capitol building. It's going to be a long trip. There are 365 steps to the top of the Capitol where the Rotunda sits, one for every day of the year.
I had no idea. That's really interesting.
I did not know that.
Did you just, Jeff, know that, or are you doing research for
I
this?
knew it was something significant. I'm
like
doing
that.
what they call research. Thanks, Google.
Yeah, and if you can imagine where the Capitol is in Washington, D.C., I mean, the entire city is built around the mall and the setup of where the Capitol is to where Washington Monument is, and then the White House kind of beyond that. This entire area, I guarantee you right now, is completely shut down to all street traffic, foot traffic, anything.
We were discussing that earlier, Becky.
Yeah, we've seen some of the barricades set up as they were moving down in the processional.
Yeah, and as we can kind of hear in our headphones here, the horses' hooves are really the only thing we're hearing right now. It is absolutely still, aside from the wind, on the ground there in front of the Capitol.
What is the rest of the schedule over the next couple of days? We know this culminates with the trip back to Plains, Georgia for burial at his longtime home. But between now and then, it's just public viewing until Washington National Cathedral and the funeral ceremony.
Right, and that'll be a very scripted affair as well. As you said, President Carter would have laid out his personal requests for what he wants his memorial to look like. But we know that memorial will take place Thursday morning, 8 o'clock local time, should last almost exactly an hour. And with our experience with covering the funerals of past presidents, I believe they'll stick to that schedule.
And I believe now we're watching family come out to watch the casket be carried in. So like Becky, you said earlier, there are now more people on the stairs and around what we are seeing.
Yeah, it looks like CNN is reporting all 4 of his children are there. I see more people filing out now as well. Looks like more friends and family members kind of close to the Carter family, not necessarily members of Congress right now.
Yeah, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren.
Still so silent you could hear a pin drop. And those flags just blowing in the wind on either side now of the casket, which has pallbearers around on either side getting ready. More family members, it looks like. Honor Guard being told to present arms. And we're going to hear Hail to the Chief. This is a 21-gun salute, so they've got howitzers actually positioned a fair distance away, I hope, from the U.S. Capitol. That they're firing 3 of them, and they'll fire 7 times in succession. If you've ever been present for one of these on like Memorial Day, it is deafening and so humbling to be present for that sound as someone is being memorialized like in that way. We can see smoke coming up from the barrels of the howitzer guns.
Three howitzers, 7 rounds apiece, and I don't know if you could hear deep in the background car alarms going off all over Washington, D.C. Yes.
Yeah, and now they're playing an orchestral version of taps, which is not normally how we hear that, but...
Right, it's usually a bugle, right?
Seems very fitting for the moment.
Yes.
And now it looks like they're moving his casket, getting ready to move into the Capitol.
Yeah, this is going to be a very orderly process here. Actually, I'm going to stand corrected on what I said before about all Marines. This looks like they've got representatives of every military branch around his casket. I see Coast Guard, I see Navy, I see Marine, I see Army. And they are stepping sideways, 1 step at a time, very orderly, carrying that casket. They'll turn here momentarily and take it up the stairs past where an additional honor guard is waiting with their rifles at the ready.
Becky, do you think all of the armed services are present because he was commander-in-chief of all of them?
I would think so, yes. And I don't know how these particular young men got picked for this role today, but I would imagine it's quite the honor for them to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, the flag that is going before the casket here is being held by a looks like a sergeant in the Army.
And now it looks like they're moving the casket, getting ready to move up the stairs and into the Capitol.
Yeah, the honor guard carrying the flag going just ahead of the pallbearers with the casket. You can hear them calling as they reach to each step, because as you can imagine, having 8 people trying to carry a casket at once would be a little bit of an organizational situation. So they're keeping it in lockstep as they head up the stairs, making sure everybody stays together and that there are no hiccups here.
Ready, step. Ready, step. Ready.
And this is just the first set of it, too. They're moving up the exterior steps of the Capitol into the building on their way to the rotunda.
Which, as Jeff told us, 365 steps.
Right, so we'll hear that ready step 365 times.
Ready, step. 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 Ready, step.
The flag-draped coffin has arrived at the top of the steps of the Capitol building, and the pallbearers are now walking it into the Capitol Rotunda. You're listening to live coverage. Former President Jimmy Carter will lie in state in the U.S. Capitol here on KSL News Radio. Thank you for listening with us.
The music has paused as the casket just reached the door to the Capitol building, and they are making their way inside now. All right, the honor guard and the casket have now moved into the building. It sounds like our audio from the feed has faded from the band as we're getting ready to transfer to visuals of inside. Capitol Rotunda is set up in a circle as it's shaped, and there's a bier in the middle where the casket will be laid to rest once they make the rest of the way in. I see Nancy Pelosi on standby there. It looks like Supreme Court Justices Sotomayor and John Roberts are in attendance as well.
And I think I see Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah, Brett
unless you said
Kavanaugh's
Becky.
there.
Yeah, and the family members are now making their way into the Capitol now that the casket has made its way inside.
Looks like Pete Buttigieg is there too, behind the Supreme Court justices.
I also really very much want to point out, again, not partisan, not political. In this solemn moment, everybody is there, which is
Right.
appropriate.
Absolutely. And I think traditionally that's how we've remembered American presidents. I mean, President Nixon was a rare kind of private affair, but for the most part, when the elder President Bush passed, when President Reagan passed, this was a situation where, regardless of your politics, you sit down together and pay respect to the man who held the office.
Right. It's about the rank or about the office, right, that we are respecting, in addition to the character of the man, but it's about our presidency.
Absolutely.
Members of the Senate who are there right now.
Complete silence in the Capitol Rotunda as they wait for the procession to make its way in. Jeff, you've been in this spot. What is that like to be in the Capitol Rotunda?
Well, first of all, you hear somebody cough. You just heard that, right? You are so self-conscious because the echo from that cough traveling upwards hundreds of feet and then back down at you. Has anybody done the little experiment where you talk in one part of
Yes.
the rotunda and you hear it because of the sound acoustics perfectly, even if it's a whisper or a pin drop, over in another section of the room? The acoustics are amazing, and I imagine if you cough, you become very self-conscious, especially at a moment like this.
All right, well, you have been listening to live coverage of President Jimmy Carter's funeral procession. This is Aaron Ryder here with Leah Murray with Inside Sources. We are going to pass things off to Jeff Kaplan's Afternoon News. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much. You're listening to KSL FM Midvale, KSL, Salt Lake City, and the developing story we're covering. It's the start of 3 days of memorials in Washington, D.C. for former President Jimmy Carter. His flag-adorned coffin arrived at the Capitol, just a few minutes ago, and former President Carter is about to lie in state in the rotunda. A host of dignitaries are gathered. If you look at the Capitol rotunda from that camera perched way above, there's a symmetry to the room. The casket will be placed in the center of the room. There are 3 groups of people, seats for the dignitaries assembled. We see Kamala Harris, the sitting vice president, is now in the room with her husband, Doug Emhoff, and Maria Shilaos is here with me. We've been watching this ceremony for the better part of the past 45 minutes as the horse-drawn carriage with the flag-draped coffin made its way to the Capitol building.
And again, showing us just what respect we do pay to our former presidents, our former political leaders. In a time they have sacrificed their lives, given their lives to service. And this very solemn ceremony really representing something very symbolic in American history of how we do mourn our leaders.
So at this point, we're waiting for the ceremony to begin, and I believe this is where Kamala Harris will be delivering some remarks to everybody assembled, which includes the extended members of the Carter family. He has 22 grandchildren and untold great-grandchildren.
Right. This is the ceremony. On Thursday, they will actually hold a state funeral in the National Cathedral. But this particular ceremony allows lawmakers the opportunity to step up to the podium and give their thoughts on the life of the former president, Jimmy Carter, tell about their experiences with the former president, and really show their respect for the man.
Right now, members of the military are walking into the room, and the ceremony, I believe, is beginning. So let's listen to the U.S. Capitol.